New England primarily years ago in the AFL, and then his brother Tim is the #2 quarterback with the New York Giants. So it's not that far-fetched at this point. You know, I'm not getting ahead of ourselves here, but you got perspective like NFC Championship game, Hasselbeck versus, well, Manning, and with Hasselbeck in reserve.
You know, that's one of the things we'll be getting to between now and the end of the season. I think it's easy in the AFC to say the Colts are the best. Who's the best team in the NFC?
Well, after tonight, a lot of people, two things are going to happen here. I mean, there'll be some people who say, well, I guess Seattle's for real. And then other people will say, well, Philadelphia was terrible. Well, but, they're still 10-2, and they're going to, right now, win an 8th straight game with the Seahawks.
Yeah, and I think, we go back to the original thing. Are we watching a bad Philadelphia team or a very good Seattle team, or maybe someplace in the middle? And maybe we're all like Mike Holmgren. We still don't know about this team.
And it may be a while before you know about them. Because next week they play San Francisco. He brings it back, and then they've got that big game with Indianapolis, but as we began to discuss last week, that could be a game that doesn't mean anything to either of these teams. 4:40 to go in the third. Seattle 42 and Philadelphia nothing.
We've got 4 high-stakes gamblers, 4 of the best poker players in the world, matched up at 4 different events.
Mike has picked a card toss, Ted has picked ping pong, Robert picked air hockey, and I picked a spelling bee.
We are playing for a seat in the final event of the World Series. This is about as high stakes as it gets.
The prop betting is all about ego, and winning this would be huge.
As you look at Independence Hall, we go to Atlanta next week. Saints Falcons on Monday night. Mike Vick and company. Brett Favre in action. Packers hosting the Lions. ESPN Sunday night at 8:30. Here's Detmer on first down. Philadelphia down 42-0. And dropped by Mahi out in the flat. Well, happy to report that young Tyler is doing very well. Michelle Tafoya on maternity leave. Michelle will be back in a couple of weeks. So the Couch Reporter wants to know how we compare Alexander and Tomlinson, and has won the league MVP. Good question. Which NFC team is the best? We can debate that. Now, will Lamar could finish up or down this year? Michelle, it's got to be up, because it's already up too much after that November. But I'll see what they say on Squawk Box tomorrow.
I think Alexander is the better inside runner, Tomlinson the better outside runner. But I think when you go to MVP in this league right now, I think you have to go to the Indianapolis Colts.
Back to Manning?
Yeah, I think you have to go to Peyton Manning.
Prior to the snap, false start, offense, number 89, 5-yard penalty, second down.
Chad Lewis. Yeah, I mean, Manning got off to, for him, a slow start this year. And then all of a sudden, Peyton's numbers, while they're not going to match last year with 49 touchdowns, they don't have to, but he has been fabulous. So has James. You could look at him as well. Right,
and I think one of those two guys is the direction I would go if you had to pick an MVP right now, but of course we don't.
Second and 15. So also wanted to know which team is the best in the NFC. And again, that's at this point, when you've got these guys, the Chicago Bears. I mean, who in the world would have thought that, especially when they lose Rex Grossman at the onset of the season? I mean, everybody's forgetting about Carolina.
Yeah, that's a team that I wouldn't forget about. I wouldn't count the Panthers out, especially it looks like they got a running game going now, tough defense. I don't know that that's not a way you want to go. I mean, you know, as we get closer to the playoffs, the running game and the defense become more and more important.
3rd and 9. And was his arm coming forward? The whistle indicating that the ball was alive, and indeed that's what they're going to say, and it wasn't, and it's going to be Marcus Tubbs who comes up with the fumble recovery.
Andy Reid is saying, how in the heck can any more of these things happen to us?
So Detmer with the empty hand coming forward. Joe Tafoya knocked it loose. Speaking of Tafoya.
ESPN Sport Legends presents Bill Russell. He was basketball's first truly athletic big man. Over 13 years in the NBA, he won 11 championships, making him the greatest winner in the history of professional sports.
He brought a new dimension to the game of pro basketball, a defensive style of play. He intimidated players right out of the league.
As a shot blocker, here's a guy that probably averaged over 10 blocks a game for his career.
I can't tell you how many layups were missed by individuals that heard footsteps behind them thinking it was Bill Russell swooping in.
When you come to write the story about Bill Russell and everything that he has done, it can be encapsulated in one word, and that is defensive. Everything about him, everything about his personality, everything about the way he played basketball spoke to being on the defense all the time.
Andy Reid is challenging this. He's going to contend that this was a forward pass and not a fumble. We have an interesting angle on this play here because his arm is coming forward, but is the ball out before Tafoya even makes contact? It looks like he's beginning to lose his grip on the ball. It comes out as his arm begins to come forward, and this would be a case where it would be ruled a fumble.
I would think that's a fumble. It looks like it comes out the back door. I mean, one shot, it looks like Joe Tafoya hits it, but on the other shot, the ball starts to come out the back of his hand before Tafoya even gets there.
Scott Green?
I say it's a fumble. What do you say?
I think it's a fumble, too.
After reviewing the play, the ruling on the field stands. The quarterback's arm did not move forward with possession of the ball. First down, Seattle. Philadelphia's charged with a timeout.
Yep, exactly as we saw it. So they do not win the challenge. Yet another, it's 5 turnovers. And of course, the Seahawks with 28 points off turnovers, 3 of them just in and of themselves run backs for touchdowns, 2 on picks, 1 on a fumble.
And we could be seeing another 7 coming up right here off a turnover.
Meanwhile, that's it for Hasselbeck, and we're going to see Seneca Wallace, drafted in the 4th round in 2003. He's only 5'11", 196, 3rd year.
But is he exciting, though?
Oh, very, out of Iowa State. And again, it's Morris who's taken over for Alexander here. And he'll see his biggest workload of the season. Meanwhile, the defense tonight. After Seattle had scored on its opening drive, you had this interception right here by Dyson. You had this pick right here by Tutupu. And then the fumble scooped up by Dyson, who scores again. 21 points from the defense alone.
Yeah, they took the quarterback out. You know who else they took out? The left tackle. Walter Jones is not in there now.
It's the best of all worlds as Trotter makes the tackle. You're going to win the game. You're going to remain as the #1 seed in the conference. You're going to win in the Eastern time zone. You have a short week. You're going to go home to after that long flight to play San Francisco, but your key guys are going to get plenty of rest tonight.
Yeah, and those are his Pro Bowl players. I mean, he takes out his quarterback, Matt Hasselbeck. He takes out his running back, Sean Alexander. He takes out his best offensive lineman, Walter Jones. And I would think Steve Hutchinson could very well be the next guy as left guard.
I think Largen's coming out pretty soon as well. On 3rd and 11. Wallace rolling. And the pass is incomplete. Chased by Curse.
Yeah, here's Walter Jones, who, you know, the thing that I've always liked about him is he's a good run blocker, too. Just watch him get on his guy and stay on him. I mean, you know, most tackles are good pass protectors, left tackle, but this guy is as good a run blocker as he is a pass protector.
Going to have a 40-yard field goal attempt right now for Josh Brown. And it's about the only thing that's gone wrong for Seattle tonight. No good. The Bronx cheer in Philadelphia.
Yeah, this crowd's going crazy.
Yeah. So it remains 42.
Well, the Seattle Seahawks joined the NFL in 1976. They haven't won a playoff game since 1984. The big name player, Steve Largent. Of course, Mike Holmgren was named a head coach in 1999, but the success that they've been looking for hasn't quite come.
Season, but can they get off that playoff schneid? And Moats tackled by Manuel and Tutupu.
You know, that's what happens when a defense, obviously when they get ahead 42-0, you can do anything you want on defense, but when they have no respect for the passing game. They just have 9, 10 guys, just everyone right up there at the line of scrimmage. And they're just pressing the run. I mean, you can just see they're not backing off. The safeties are up there, the corners are up there, the linebackers are right up in the line. There's nothing to drop for.
It's Reggie Brown. They're going to rule that a catch. Philadelphia, if you're thinking about a third quarterback, they don't have one right now. So you had McNabb go down, and they didn't bring another guy in, McMahon and Detmer.
I know who their third quarterback is because I saw him in practice the other day. You know who it would be if they had to play a third quarterback? There he is right there, Mike Barton.
Right, the long snapper.
Yeah, the long snapper. And he practices as a quarterback, too. I mean, he gets in and he takes reps.
3rd and 7. He was recruited, was Bartram, as a quarterback in college. Greg Lewis was the intended receiver there. For the Eagles, you go back to, and we were here 3 weeks ago, and you talk about the roof caving in on one play. Because when the Eagles, as Landeta kicks it to Jimmy Williams, I mean, Philadelphia is still in the hunt. Despite that, we're going through the whole Owens thing, all that turmoil. And then McNabb fighting through injury, and this is a game they should have won. And then this, Roy Williams with the interception. And Dallas pulls off a miracle win, and then McNabb gets hurt. So you lose your quarterback, you lose the game, and in effect, the season went down the drain as well on one play.
Yeah, because, you know, as you say, they had Dallas beaten. I mean, they had dominated them the whole way, and even if they just run the ball out there, they probably would have been okay. But then, you know, McNabb throws that interception to Roy Williams. There's no one out there. And then, you know, being the competitor he is and the instincts, he goes to make the tackle, and then that's the end of his season.
And again, to go back on opening night in Atlanta in the Monday night game as Morris picks up about 4. McNabb was hurt, suffered what they call a sports hernia, played through it for half a season, knew he'd need surgery at the end of the season, started to feel, according to Donovan, a little bit better. He was becoming more mobile at that point. And then they have that game in hand, and the next thing you know, good night, Donovan. Good night, game. good night 2005.
Yeah, and I think it started before that. I think the Terrell Owens thing was a big part of it, and that two sides. I mean, one off the field, Andy Reid did what he had to do, but on the field, I mean, Terrell Owens was a big playmaker and touchdown maker.
End of the third, Seattle 42, Philadelphia nothing, and Monday Night Football is back after this message from our ABC station.
When a boxer prepares, he's only thinking of success. He's only thinking of destruction. But to conquer, he must obliterate the hopes of his opponent and be the only man standing. Fight Night, only on ESPN.
Fourth quarter begins. In the history of the league, the largest margin of defeat in a season after a Super Bowl appearance would be Denver losing to New Orleans 42-0, which is the score right now back in 1988. Fourth quarter begins. Al Michaels, John Madden, and Sam Ryan, and Seneca Wallace fumbles. Morris picks the ball up, and Javon Curse creates another fumble. And the Philadelphia Eagles may have recovered, but they're going to say that it was Seattle ball because it was down by contact on the initial fumble.
Seneca Wallace, he never got that snap, and then instead of handing it to the ball carrier, he kicked it back to the ball carrier. So that was about 3 fumbles on one play, and the Seahawks still have the ball.
They're going to rule that he was down there. I didn't hear the whistle. And maybe there will be a challenge here.
Timeout, Seattle. This is their first charge timeout.
Well, it can't be. I mean, if the whistle had blown, and I assume it had to have, even though we didn't hear it, there is no challenge. Timeout.
Irish socks might make me lucky today.
Robert Williamson wears a new pair of lucky socks every day. Jeffrey Lissandro always chews gum. And Jesus never shaves during the World Series. There's a lot of strange superstitions out there.
Every gambler is, suspicious, but some a lot more than others.
I have some quirks, some things that I like to keep a pattern on.
Lucky hand, lucky shirt, lucky talisman.
If I'm winning, I wear the same jacket, the same shirt.
But the real question is, do they actually work?
I don't think having a rabbit's foot would make me luckier. It certainly didn't make the rabbit any luckier.
If you think that that's what was good for you, then that's what you should do.
Tune in to NBA Friday this week as Vince Carter, Jason Kidd, Richard Jefferson. The New Jersey Nets go on the road to Cleveland to take on LeBron James and the Cavaliers. NBA Friday coming up on ESPN later on this week.
For Philadelphia, then for Seattle. 3rd and 17 after the timeout. It's Morris.
Did you notice the funny thing on that play before in the fumble? The Seahawks put their #1 draft choice in. It was the center, Chris Spencer. gave him one play, and he didn't get the ball up. Here he is here. He's number 65. He doesn't get the ball up to Seneca Wallace. So Mike Holmgren, even though he has this big lead, he takes his #1 draft choice, puts him in for one play, fumbles, and takes him out. Toback goes back in.
Yeah, Robbie Toback says thanks a lot.
He's probably over there having a cup of that cider. The next thing he knows, he's back in the game.
Reno Mahe. Out to the 46-yard line. If you don't succeed at first, try again. So Spencer and Wallace doing a little snapping on the sideline.
Warning sets a tough screen. And tough enough he threw Jason Williams off.
Beautiful backdoor from Haslam with the gorgeous bounce pass.
1st and 10 from the Redskin 41. First overtime possession. LaDainian Tomlinson. He sneaks by Washington, breaks it free, and the San Diego Chargers have won in overtime. A 41-yard touchdown run.
PHE. Quick move to the basket and throws it behind the back.
30 at New England on a Monday night 3 weeks ago. And Manning will go right to the air. And Manning goes for 6. And he has a wide open Harrison. And that's the way the undefeated Indianapolis Colts begin the game. With an 80-yard touchdown. It's Harrison.
Thanks, guys.
Hey! That was my car.
Oh, that was your car? Well, this is my parking spot. I park here every day. That's an honest mistake.
The NBA on ESPN Saturday. The New York Knicks need to sharpen their game to avoid getting burned by Steve Nash and the Suns. Knicks, Suns, live Saturday. The NBA on ESPN.
A reminder to check your local listings for your next edition of SportsCenter. We'll recap all the top stories from around the world of sports, all the scores and highlights as well. For now, back to Monday Night Football.
And we're proud of you guys. Phenomenal work.
And they play hurt.
They play well. They really play hurt. Ryan Moats, tackled by Jordan Babineau. Well, for Philadelphia, we've talked about what's going on this season, of course, headlined by Owens. But Corey Simon didn't sign a contract, wound up going to Indianapolis. Derek Burgess left to go to Oakland. They lost Jermaine Mayberry, the guard. He went to New Orleans. Not that you can't withstand those losses. A lot of teams, lose guys in the offseason. But then you just compound it with the Owens thing and the McNabb injury. Buck Holter getting hurt in training camp and on and on and on. It's gone. Tupu makes the tackle behind the line of scrimmage. And don't forget Todd Pinkston. He would have been the other wideout next to Owens. He was gone. And Hank Fraley, they lost him in midseason to a shoulder injury. Trey Thomas, a Pro Bowler. Owens, McNabb, Lito Shepard. Brian Westbrook spraining a foot tonight. Hasn't played very much.
I don't know if it really has anything to do with it, but sometimes I think losing, makes you have more injuries. You ever notice we did 3 Indianapolis Colts games this year, and they had the same guys playing every game. They never had an injury.
Through Mahi's hands. It's one of those years, and we've seen it for year after year. You need a little bit of luck, and maybe it does come with winning, but the teams that go the farthest are the teams that, for the most part, don't have those injuries that can take your season and just send it into a dumpster.
And I think that's one of the big reasons for the Colts this year.
Better with a mini shank job, and you got a flag down. And Vendetta gets contacted, so you might have a running into the kicker.
Looked like it was right down there by the snapper. About Mike Bartram.
It's going to be a hold. It was 4th down
Holding.
and 11.
Offense, 88. Penalty is declined. First down.
That was Mike Bartram, the holder. He was holding way, way back.
And number 3 quarterback.
The PGA Tour presents the Franklin Templeton Shootout. Tiburon Golf Club in Naples, Florida hosted the event for the 5th consecutive year. Heading into the final round of the partner tournament, Kenny Perry and John Houston found themselves trailing the leaders by 2 strokes. They opened the event with a 64 in the modified alternate shot format and a 63 in the best ball round. But on Sunday, they scrambled their way to a 13 under 59 and a 2-stroke victory.
Kenny Perry and John Houston have won the 2005 Franklin Templeton Shootout.
It was the first win for both Perry and Houston at Greg Norman's yearly tournament. Congratulations, Kenny Perry and John Houston, the 2005 Franklin Templeton Shootout champions.
ESPN Saturday. The New York Knicks need to sharpen their game to avoid getting burned by Steve Nash and the Suns. Knicks, Suns, live Saturday. The NBA on ESPN.
Welcome back to the Iditarod as you take a look at the numbers for the Eagles quarterbacks tonight. 3 interceptions, 2 of them run back for touchdowns. McMahon started, then Detmer. Now you've got Seneca Wallison. Chris Spencer, the center, does come back. Morris. You know, John, there's always a story you want to tell when you're on the air for years. And you just don't have the time to do it, as you know, as you love to say, a game breaks out. I'm doing a college football game for ABC in 1978. Frank Broyles is my partner. Great coach. He just retired as the Arkansas coach and still is the AD. And we're talking about coaching trees. So we're doing a game at Stanford. We meet with the coach. We get back in the car. 10-minute ride to the production meeting. And I'll never forget, Frank says to me, he says, you know that young coach we just met with? He is the most impressive young coach I have ever been around. Stanford, 1978, as Wallace gives it to Morris. Of course, that man's name was Bill Walsh. And Bill Walsh then gets hired by the 49ers in 79, and the rest is history. And on they go to the Super Bowl championships and Bill to the Hall of Fame. And just in that 1 hour-and-a-half meeting, Frank spotted him and said, the most impressive young coach I have ever seen.
Well, you know, yeah, I mean, Bill was very, very impressive as an assistant, and then he went there to Cincinnati with Paul Brown, and I think that you talk about the all-time great coaches, and Paul Brown was one of those guys, and I think Bill was bright and knew a lot about football before that, but I think he really developed his mind with Paul Brown in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati, that was before Stanford, and then on to San Francisco. And I swear to you, in the second 5 minutes of that conversation, I've told you the story off the air, of course, the other thing Broyles says to me, and Frank was from Arkansas, he said, we have a young man who's the Attorney General down here. Someday he'll be the President of the United States. Of course, I'd never heard of the guy at that point. So 14 years later, when Bill Clinton gets elected, I had to call Frank, after the Walsh-Clinton-Quinella, and I said, now listen, I said, who do you like in the 4th at Santa Anita tomorrow?
Frank knows his people. You don't know Frank knows his horses.
Horses, exactly.
Now, there are some people you just know that. You talk to them. This person is something special. They're going to be someone or something.
That was a pretty good call.
So I'll tell one that I've always wanted to tell, and it's about Reggie White, and and being an inspiration. Reggie always wanted a bus like mine, and he'd always say, hey, give me a bus like you. Now, I know Reggie well, and Reggie meant free. He wanted a free bus. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, Reggie finally got a bus, and he gets it out in California, drives it all the way across country. So I said, where'd you get the drivers? And he said, I drove it. And I said, well, did you have another driver? He said, yes, Sarah. He said, Sarah and I drove it across the country. I said, well, where'd you take the lessons? He said, we didn't take any lessons. I said, I got drivers. I mean, I think it's like flying an airplane. I never touched my bus. This is in Green Bay. It's a true story. I went out in the parking lot and I said, look, if Reggie can do it and Sarah can do it. And I said, hey, did you sleep when Sarah was driving? And he said, yeah, I slept when Sarah was driving. I said, okay, if Sarah can drive it and you can drive the bus, it can't be that hard. I went out in the parking lot. I told my drivers, I said, let me get in here. I'm going to drive this thing. And I started driving it around the parking lot in Green Bay.
Now that's
inspiration from Reggie White.
Unbelievable. Mahe from the 28. Now that's a woman. Brings home the bacon, cooks it, and drives a bus.
Yeah, and then I talked to Sarah about that, and she said not only that, of course he could sleep when I drove because I was a lot better driver than he was.
Bladder control is an issue, and I've mastered that.
You need to be drinking at the right time during the 2-hour session so that on the 15-minute break is when you use the restroom.
There's a huge mass rush to the bathroom.
There's so many people, you're screwed.
I can't even believe they're waiting in a line like that. There aren't very many women who play poker, so I can just casually get up and go to the restroom with no lines.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
This year, it's a huge advantage to be a woman because you get right into the bathroom. You don't have to wait.
There's actually things you can take that strengthen everything down there. If you wear a catheter or Depends, you're good to go.
I know right when the perfect time to leave is, and I bolt.
There's this secret bathroom that I'm not telling anybody about. That's where I go. For everyone else, wait in line. Good luck.
At least you guys didn't follow me to the bathroom.
ESPN Saturday. The New York Knicks need to sharpen their game to avoid getting burned by Steve Nash and the Suns. Knicks, Suns, live Saturday. The NBA on ESPN.
John, the elements finally got to the boys downstairs.
Yep, blew right through into the truck.
The whole thing, Steve Nagelson in the back row, he's already under 2 feet of snow. But on we go from the 39-yard line on first down. Detmer throws, and that pass is incomplete.
Getting back to this Seattle team, I think they have plenty of offense. And again, the defense, we talked about Mike Holmgren saying, I'm not sure exactly how good we are. I really don't know this team that well, and that has to be the part. But the longer they can go, I mean, you have these young guys and they have high motors and all that stuff. Then the more they play, pretty soon they're not young, inexperienced guys. And I think that's where they're getting a little help tonight. I think if I had an offensive lineman I could take and say, okay, pick one. I think right now I'd take that guy, Welder Jones.
Snap, false start, left guard, offense, 5-yard penalty, second down.
Jones he's become a perennial Pro Bowler. 9th year, picked in the first round back in '97.
Yeah, remember for 3 or 4 years he was a franchise player and he'd never go to training camp, and he'd come in the week the season would start. They finally signed him to a long-term contract this year.
And Orlando Orlando Pace was taking a page out of his book, too.
And then he did the same thing, and I think Orlando Pace signed a contract this year. But those are two of the best. One, Jonathan Ogden, is in that group. But I think that this guy is probably a better run blocker than those guys.
And when you've got Alexander running behind you, it's one of the reasons that Sean almost won the rushing title last year. He is out in front this season as we head into the second week of December. Mahe with the catch. Ball loose. Stays down.
One thing that has impressed me about this Seattle Seahawks defense, and of course I know they're ahead 42-0 and all that, but they've tackled well. And I think that's a big thing today as the season goes on. Teams seem to get beaten down a little, and then their tackling starts to slide. But this team looked like a pretty good tackling team. Sean Landetta wanted to get a practice shot in.
The same thing. Why not? Stay warm.
It was an ugly practice shot.
Illegal snap infraction. Center. 5-yard penalty. 4th down.
Bartram again.
Yeah, well, he got canned the last time. Remember when he was called for that holding penalty? They just canned him, just ran right over him. He was on his back and grabbing the guy who was on top of him, and they called him for a holding penalty. And now he's having an infraction. He's trying to keep that guy off him. You can't do that in high school football. You can't do it in college football. Get over the center like that and can him.
Nico Kudavidis. And then his punt will go out at about the 22-yard line. Well, Dyson may be back in the locker room with that sprained ankle. But what a night for Andre. 2 touchdowns. One on an interception return, the other on the run back of a fumble. 42-0 Seattle.
Great moment on ESPN. The UEFA Champions League final, the top prize of European club football, has produced some of the most memorable games in history. In 2004, an unlikely pair of teams squared off. High-scoring Monaco and the Giant Killers Porto took the pitch for 90 minutes of unforgettable football. And in the end, it was Porto, the pride of Portugal, holding the European Cup high for the world to see. A celebration of sports memories from around the globe. Great moments on ESPN.
This is your typical Sunday in Green Bay. Crickets. Things were a lot busier when everybody's racing to get to the game. That's probably a citation. Looks like Schutze found himself a Sunday steak out there. A criminal could pick this town clean when the Packers are playing. Well, if it weren't for me. Let's move along there, fella. Probably a Bears fan.
Seattle on top by a score of 42-0. Largest shutout in Monday night history. 1987. Remember it well. San Francisco beat Chicago 41-0. So recall in that game, John, the 49ers had a huge lead at the half. And all you envisioned was Mike Ditka just blowing the plaster off the walls in the locker room at halftime.
Yeah, sometimes it gets so bad, though, that there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you just call in the dogs and put out the fire. The hunt's over, and you go to get on to the next one. Remember that happened to me once in Kansas City. I mean, we just couldn't get anything. I mean, everything we did, it would run. And I said, the heck with it. I just took all my guys out, put other guys in, and said, just finish the game. Let's